Welcome to the Irish NFL Show and to our Week 1 preview. We're in part 4. You can check out all the other 3 parts where we have the 6 o'clock games, the 9 o'clock games, and you can also check those out as podcasts. We're starting off with the last of the 9 o'clock games before we get to Sunday Night Football and Monday Night Football, and we have Rams Seahawks up Colum in that slot. That's a tasty enough tie. It's slightly hard to know where the Rams are at, but they got Matthew Stafford back. Cooper Kupp maybe struggling at time of recording with a hamstring injury, which is a big blow. How do you see this one going? A lot of people feeling very high on the Seahawks this year, so it's not an easy start for the Rams.
Yeah, many people, including me, very high on the Seahawks. If we're to continue with the music theme, this is Oasis versus the Eagles, because the Rams were everywhere, right? Like Oasis, you couldn't escape them. But ultimately, it all fell apart very, very quickly. And when it did, that was it. I feel that is it for the Rams. I mean, I think, they'll be okay. My worry is that they probably will be okay enough to be the 5th worst team in the league. And then what do you do for a quarterback next year? Sean McVay talked about walking away. I think maybe he should have taken a year out, recharged the batteries, come back somewhere else. They've got Aaron Donald, who is incredible, but the problem is that's all they have. Like, who's Matthew Stafford going to throw the ball to? Who's going to run the ball? Like, can the O-line hold up? There are so many questions. The Seahawks are the Eagles. I don't particularly like them, but I can't ignore them because you hear them all the time. And Pete Carroll, they're it's like Hotel California. You can't escape. Pete Carroll and Schneider, I think, have done a great job of building the roster there. I think Gino is going to continue to be good. I can understand the problems that they had in the second half of last year. I think they've looked to address some of those issues, and I think that ultimately they will have enough to get the win. The crowd is going to be really loud, and I have the Seahawks getting the win over their divisional rivals, and their march to the Super Bowl begins this weekend.
Brian, from the ashes of Oasis, of course, Noel Gallagher formed High Flying Birds. Is it High Flying Birds for the Seahawks for you?
Yeah, I suppose you'd have to expect that he would win the game, but I would caveat that when these two teams play each other, no matter what the circumstances of each team, their seasons, whether it's the Rams being successful or last year with Seattle, they always play each other tough. We saw 2 games at the back end of last season that took overtime for Seahawks to beat them in week 18. The game previous to that, they took a late touchdown from Knock to get them over the line. And similar enough when it was the other way, when Fisher was the head coach, and they always seem to find ways, no matter what the circumstances are, to play each other tough. Kupp is gone. He's seen a hamstring specialist. People are kind of questioning whether that really is the severity of the injury. It could be more serious. Matthew Stafford today was really disgruntled in his press conference earlier today. He was going to say people need to get off Kupp's back. This is a real serious situation for him. And you kind of get the sense that they're really kind of trying to navigate some kind of motivation for this game if they shouldn't already have it going into a new season. I think Pete Carroll will have this team fired up. It's Seattle all day for me. I can totally understand why Colum is buying into the programme, bearing in mind where they were 12 months ago.
Colum, Sunday night game is Cowboys versus Giants, so Brian will obviously have the Monster Energy in the fridge to make sure he has plenty of pep at 1:20 effectively on Monday morning. We'll come to you in a second, Brian, but how do you see this one going? Cowboys again under the pressure, as the Cowboys always are. Dak is back. Didn't look too great towards the end of last season. Can he pick it up and get to a different level, get to the level they need him to be at if they're going to fulfill the potential that this stacked roster has?
Yeah, the funny thing about the Cowboys, it was like Brian Epstein as the manager, right? Because the Cowboys, the players you would expect, given the talent, that they should be front and center, and yet Jerry Jones is always the guy who gets most talked about. I think this will be a really tough battle, right? I think you've got 2 really intriguing defenses. I really like what the Giants have done on defense. I think bringing in Isaiah Simmons, did you hear how Wink Martindale was talking about him? He was like a child at Christmas that had got their favourite toy. I think he'll use him in really interesting ways. But they are going up against a Cowboys team that for me are amongst, if not the best defense in the league. I don't think this will be very high scoring, but this is the game I've probably gone back and forth on the most, even more than the Steelers and the 49ers. I'm going to say that the Cowboys get the win, but I'm not saying that with a whole lot of conviction. I just think that maybe Dak, with Brandon Cooks at this point, to get off to a fast start, I have my concerns about how long that can last. But yeah, the Cowboys to edge it.
Brian, are you having any of that? The Giants are in that funny zone, I kind of think, where Colum had mentioned on one of our other shows this week that the Vikings could be better this season and they'll make a big improvement on defense and yet might win fewer games. You could see a similar situation emerging for the Giants because it is a tough schedule and they have a lot to do. Can they get over the Cowboys in week 1?
Yeah, I believe so. I think it's long overdue. The Giants have only beaten the Cowboys 1 of the last 13 games, and that was against Andy Dalton. Cowboys, with all due respect, they hadn't beaten them previous to that. So Ben McAtee's first game, which is, we're going back seven years at this stage. So, but I think they've done enough offensively. Like I get where Colum's coming from in terms of the focus on the Cowboys defense. But I do think the Giants with Waller and with Paris Campbell and Jalen Hyatt coming in, he's looked so impressive, in the camp, and obviously it has to come in and show it in the real games. But I think it's not just the Saquon Barkley situation anymore. It's not just Daniel Jones having to run the ball. I think they've done enough. Offensive line will be a big question mark going up against the Cowboys defence. We saw last year when they played the 2 games, they struggled. And I agree with Colin. I think the Giants have done a lot defensively. My trepidation would be that they're going to start 2 rookie cornerbacks, a 7th round pick and a 1st round pick. Now you could argue the 7th round pick deserves a spot. He's been fantastic. He's been lights out in camp and even in the preseason games, that he's deserving of a spot. And Brian Dable has always said, no matter what your circumstances are, we saw with Kenny Galladay last year, it doesn't matter if you're a 1st round pick, 70 million player, if you've done the job and you're good enough, you'll play. That's my concern. Can this new secondary hold up? I think they will. I think we're due a win. I think the time has come. The Giants, as well as they played last year, only won 1 divisional game, and they tied with the Commanders in winning them. So the 2 games they were unbeaten. That has to change for the Giants to be taken seriously. Not just going to the playoffs again, but going into the playoffs and really winning, with the exception of that Vikings game. So for me, Giants will find a way to win on Sunday. I think Waller will have an impact immediately.
Colum, Monday night is a big game in a lot of different ways, not least because it's the anniversary of 9/11. It's 2 New York teams. It was interesting, I thought, one of the vignettes that I took out of Hard Knocks was Robert Saleh and Aaron Rodgers had this conversation about how they wanted Rodgers, and Rodgers wanted to start the preseason game, but one of the reasons was Saleh said, I don't want you starting for the first time and being introduced to the fans in that way on the anniversary of 9/11 at home, which I thought was an interesting and a nice touch, and it shows the amount of thought that they put into the preseason. A lot of people very high on the Jets, and the NFL now has made a joke of this ridiculous conspiracy theory that the NFL is scripted and it's part of the preseason promos. But if you were scripting the season, you'd want the Jets to start rolling. Do you think they will against the Bills?
I mean, it's a mouth-watering clash, right, to begin Monday night. And Monday night is traditionally the kind of almost premier game, and in many respects, or has become that. And I think the Jets will be so much better than they were last year, right? Because Zach Wilson is not it. They've kept him on the roster because he's cheap, and he's not going to say anything. He's learned his lesson, I think, after some of the comments last year. So he's got to be very tame in front of the media. But look, it's all about Aaron Rodgers, Garrett Wilson. I think I've Garrett Wilson down as my offensive player of the year. I think that connection will be very good. But I think that people are kind of underrating the Bills in a strange way, right? Because last year they were everybody's Super Bowl favourites, and the season kind of petered out for any number of reasons. The storms, Damar Hamlin, Von Miller injury. So they come in with fewer expectations. And I think the way in which these 2 QBs approach things, Rodgers is so cerebral, right, in what he does. Josh Allen is like Animal from the Muppets on drums. Like, everything he does is just instinctive, and he plays like with his hair on fire, and he's so good, and he's such a freak in what he does. And I just love his approach, right? Because everything he does is like, it's the 4th down in the Super Bowl, and we have to get 10 yards, or we have to get a touchdown, and that's refreshing, right? And that's when I fell in love with the sport because of John Elway, and John Elway sort of had a similar sort of approach. Every single down was, I have to make something happen, I have to make it happen. So I'm probably a little bit romantic on the Bills, but I have them getting the win. It's a little bit of an upset, perhaps, the fact that they go in to MetLife and get the win. To me, they can do it. we'll see what Sean McDermott calling plays. That's the one little asterisk, the caveat I put on it. But I think they will edge a thriller.
Brian, it is an interesting note about the Bills that, considering the model of consistency that they've been, the way they've racked up regular season wins, we know it hasn't always gone their way in the playoffs, particularly not last season when Joe Burrow and the Bengals went in and did what they did and blew them up at home. But they haven't done an awful lot in the off-season because really they didn't need to. They have a really strong roster. They have really good coaching. I'd say they'll be quite annoyed at the way the Jets have been talking up their own defence, talking about how they think it's going to be historically good. If ever you wanted to go in and make a point, it's this game.
Absolutely. Annoyed or relieved, you go both ways on that, because the level of expectation going into last season, and Colum rightly called it, they came like a steam train, like in terms of how he's referred to Josh Allen, lights out stuff immediately, and then it kind of fell away because of all various different aspects of the season. Maybe it'll suit them better. They haven't. As much as Colum thinks it would be a shock or a slight surprise, they're still favourites for the game. So the Vegas have looked at this and go, despite everything that's happened in the off-season, they've kind of drilled into both teams and both squads and both panels and still see the Bills as favourites to win this game. I'm with Colum. I think the Bills will have a point to prove on Monday night, more so because of the way the nature of how last season ended, as much as the fact that the Jets are getting all the hype. The pressure on Monday night, bearing in mind 9-11 as well, like it's going to be so much. It's like Aaron Rodgers is going to have to take all that on his shoulders and navigate it. He might be able to deal with it. Can the other players in the team deal with it? Because other players have come into this team. It's been quite a lot of changes since last season. Can they all kind of raise up the expectation? We've seen the Robert Saleh's press conferences, kind of the team camaraderie and hard knocks. They're also buying into it, but it's all very well buying into it. Monday night, America's watching, the world is watching. It'll be interesting to see can they live up to the expectations that surround this team now. Yeah,
the Jets, as we know, get editorial veto on Hard Knocks, so what you're seeing is definitely very carefully edited and very well presented. I'm with the two of you. I'm going Bills for this one. I think Aaron Rodgers is going to be waiting into week 2 at least for his first win. They have a tough start to the season.
That's good news. If you're a Jets fan watching this, that's great news, because generally when we have a clean sweep, it goes the opposite way. So good news for everyone out there who is supporting Aaron Rodgers and his team.
I think that might be the only clean sweep we managed across all 4 week 1 preview shows. You can check out the other 3. They're also available as podcasts, and we'll see you next week.